Hi, it's Kai, and today we are going to be doing a very basic, bare bones, beginner makeup tutorial. This video was inspired slash slightly requested by my little cousin. She is starting to dabble into makeup because she's in like her preteen years, and she asked me for some makeup advice and asked me for videos. And I was like, you know what? These would be good videos to put on my channel overall for anyone who is starting out with makeup, whether you are again like 11, 12, 13, just starting your makeup journey and playing around, or you're 40 or 50 and just starting to dabble in makeup. I feel like this kind of has a lot of the basic beginner type of knowledge, terminology, and stuff like that. And of course, if there is anything that I kind of talk about in this video that you want a little bit more explanation on, a little bit more in depth, a technique, a tutorial, whatever it is, I will do it for you guys. But I really just wanted to do a completely beginner's makeup look because I don't think I've ever done a completely beginner's makeup look. I also want to do some beginner makeup starter kits, like what things I would have wanted when I first started doing makeup on myself. Anyway, that is enough of me rambling on. Let's just stop the chatter and get into this video. So I personally always like to start off with my brows, and all I really do is a clear brow gel because I like the shape of my brows generally. I know they're bleached right now, or like half bleached, half grown in, but I wanted to wait. I have something exciting that I'm doing with a brand and wanted to wait for that to come up to redo my brow bleach or re-bleach my brows. I don't know why I said that funny. And I just like to take the product on a spoolie and honestly kind of follow the natural pattern of my brows. In the front, I'll fluff them up a little bit more because the front of my brows go up, and then for the rest, I just kind of like brush it out. Something I really wish I did that I didn't do when I was first getting into makeup was to use a pressed powder on my eyelids, because I have always had really oily lids even when I was, you know, a young little middle schooler, and I would find my eyeliner slipping around and such. I didn't start wearing eyeshadow, I don't think, until I was 18, I want to say. I kind of had to graduate to different stages of makeup. Like in the 8th grade, I think I was allowed to wear eyeliner and mascara. And then when I went into high school, I think I maybe, or not high school, when I turned 16, so my sophomore year of high school, I would have been able to, I think, add like blush and a little bit of lipstick to that, because I want to say that a lipstick was the first thing, and maybe not even blush. I want to say it was lip products and lipstick that I was allowed to wear. So like mascara, eyeliner, and then lip products. And then I think when I turned 18, or like close to turning 18, is when I was able to wear eyeshadow and stuff, and that's when I had started, you know, my first YouTube channel. But putting all the lore aside, the reason that I do that is because, again, I have very oily eyelids, and this, you know, just kind of blanks them out to make them look less shiny, oily. And that way my mascara and eyeliner, if I do those, won't start smudging any more than it would already smudge in, you know, 90-degree weather. Like I said, I was personally allowed to wear a little bit of liner, and the first liner that I tried out, I believe, was the Maybelline Unstoppable liner, and I always wore the brown shade. I remember it was the shade Espresso, and I don't use that one anymore, but I do have this LA Girl one. It's a dark brown, and eventually, I think, again, when I turned 16 or maybe even 18, I started using a little bit more black pencil. But honestly, I would say just go with a pencil initially that is a few shades deeper than your skin tone. So if you do have a really deep skin tone, then black will probably work better for you than a dark brown liner that basically melds into your skin tone. So I would just take a little bit of this, and honestly, when I was younger, I did just kind of like completely rim, like press down super hard, really harsh line all the way around my eyes. But if younger me knew what I know now, I would have definitely, number one, gotten the liner a little bit closer to my actual lash line to help accentuate the thickness of lashes. And as you see, it just gives a little bit of definition to the eye. There's nothing wrong with not doing mascara and eyeliner. You know, you can wear any order or any steps of makeup that you want to. It's not that big of a deal, but it can just give your eye a little bit of definition. If you want to give yourself like a little bit more of a flared out cat eye effect, you can still bring out pencil liner really easily to make winged liner, and then you can eventually graduate onto liquid, because I feel like liquid is it's a lot to wield, especially if you're not quite used to how you like to do your liner and how you like it to look. But like I said, younger me, I wish I would have done it a little bit softer and a little bit closer to my lash line and have it almost be like a soft smudgy look, which is what I'm doing here. And honestly, to get that soft smudgy look, you can do one of two things. You can take a pencil that's really creamy like this one and just kind of draw the initial line on there, and then go in with a little pencil brush of some sort. My favorite one is somewhere. It has product on it, but you would go in with a little pencil brush and just kind of smudge over it, you know, just lightly brushing your brush over it. Another way that you could do it is just going straight in with your pencil brush or even a liner brush like this, but using that straight on your pencil and then smudging that on the lash line. That also gives a little bit of a smoky effect. But also, if you just kind of do short strokes with a very light hand, it also gives you a little bit less of a super defined line. Like, not as smoky again as if you were to blow it out with a liner, but it's not as harsh as just going in and pressing down and having, you know, again, a harsh line. And it all depends on your eye shape, how much you want to bring it into your eyes or how much you want to do around. I usually like to keep my inner corner a little bit blank because I do feel like the space in here is a little bit small. So doing really heavy liner in the inner corner usually makes my eyes look a little bit like more smaller and closed off. And the same thing if you do liner on your lower lash line all the way around, then it'll also make your eyes, or can make your eyes, not always, but it can make your eyes look a little bit smaller. Some people who have like really big doe eyes and want to make them appear a little bit smaller want to do that. Other people who have like smaller eyes or feel like they don't have a lot of lid space, or like, you know, want to add a little bit of brightness to their eye, will often keep the liner on the outer corner to allow for a wide-eyed effect or wider-eyed effect. Again, I personally like to keep the inner third of my eye blank unless I'm doing something where I want to accentuate the inner corner of my eye, or I'm using a colored eyeliner. Sometimes I'll do that on the inner corner just to, again, add a little bit of pizzazz to a look. But for my lower lash line, I wait until after I do concealer to do my liner there, just because concealer and blending it out and powder and all of that is usually going to kind of take away the line that you made. So I just like doing it at the end so I have an idea of what the entire under eye area is going to look like. So speaking of concealer, for concealer, I personally like to go for a concealer that is either my skin tone shade or just 1 or 2 shades lighter than my skin tone shade. I know that the really bright under eye is really popular, but I've just never really liked that look on me. I feel like it's just a little bit much and a little bit heavy on me. So this is the Flower Beauty Light Illusion concealer. It's just the one that I've been using in my Project Pan series. And as you can see, it's just like maybe a shade or 2 lighter than my skin tone. And of course, the way you apply concealer, you can do it in a number of ways. Some people like to draw their concealer straight onto their face in like a triangle under the eyes or dots or whatever. A lot of makeup artists, however, recommend putting it on a palette or the back of your hand instead of straight on your face, and then using a concealer brush to apply it, which is what I like to do. And also, as far as the order of your makeup here, some people like to do, oh, I forgot about primer. So this is a good time to remember that actually. So as I do my primer, which I'm going to do the Milani No Pore Zone Mattifying Primer, because my baby cousin has a similar type of primer. It's the e.l.f. I think no pore type of primer. So this is one of the ones that is a little bit more of that silicone-y type of texture. And I personally don't put primer all over my face. I like to concentrate it, especially if it's one of these mattifying primers, to the parts of my face that need the most mattifying. So it's usually the T-zone and also that's usually the same place that has the biggest pores on your face, which pores are natural. It's fine if you have pores and they show through your makeup. Honestly, I don't really use mattifying and pore filling foundation, or primers rather, and foundations, like things that are supposed to conceal the texture on your face, because I'm just kind of that person who believes, you know, your face is your face. I'll also do a little bit on my chin and on my upper lip because it is summertime, and that has the tendency to make me like sweat. And then again, a little bit on the forehead. Even though it's my first time using this one, I like it. It's not pulling up my sunscreen at all, and it's also not looking like too mattifying, you know what I'm saying? But as I was saying before that, as far as your foundation and concealer, it really depends on the order that you want to do them. Some people do foundation before concealer. That's what I used to do. I started doing concealer before foundation just because I felt like that gave me a lighter look, and instead of having like really heavy concealer on after putting on a more full coverage foundation, I found that I could conceal first, figure out exactly what parts of my face need a little bit more coverage, and then go in with something that kind of gives me the coverage I need without being too much. And I also just have never really liked a full coverage look. That I look back at some of my photos where I look at the eyeshadow looks and I'm like, oh, that's really great, but I don't love the complexion because it's just so like full coverage, none of my, you know, moles or anything showing through, and I really like those aspects of my face, so I don't like covering them up as much. But anyway, now we can go in with our concealer. Like I said, I like to go in with it on a brush because that way I can pick up how much product I need and see, okay, I don't feel like I need too much more concealer on this eye. And again, you can just control the amount of product that you're applying. I like to bring it on my inner corners and then out kind of to the outer corner. And this is a reason that I like doing complexion after I do eyes, because if I was doing eyeshadow, I could use my concealer to like clean up the outer corner of my eye like that and sharpen my eyeshadow. I'll do the same over here so that I don't have just random lightness out in the side, even though it'll all blend together in the end. And then you can kind of bring it down towards the sides of your nose. I also like to do my upper lip because my upper lip area has a little bit of darkness. So I cover my upper lip and kind of around my nose. Especially as you get older, you can kind of have either darkness or redness around your nose, or even you might experience it when you're blowing your nose a lot. And then I also like to come again around the perimeter of my mouth and down onto my chin. So pretty much the entirety of the middle of my face has the concealer with the exception of my nose. I keep my nose blank again because I have like my little nose moles and stuff like that, and I don't want to cover them up. So I will just go in with a foundation or skin tint or whatever I'm using over that instead of having 2 layers of product over it. And then this part is kind of optional. It really just depends on how you like blending out your makeup, but I like taking a makeup sponge and a little bit of my setting spray to wet the sponge, and then I press that over all of the places I put concealer, because this will pick up any extra product that will cause your makeup to look cakey or creasy. And also adding a little bit of setting spray is going to help with the longevity of your makeup, and it also helps everything just melt together and look, again, less cakey, powdery, less makeup-y. This is another thing that's kind of a preference item. Once I do my under eye concealer, I do like to go back in and set just my under eye area. I don't want to do the entirety of my face because I'm going to be blending foundation or skin tint on top of it. So I literally just take a little bit of powder. You have the Fenty Beauty, you being my little cousin, the Fenty Beauty press powder. I have the loose powder. They essentially do similar types of things. I just have had the loose powder because that was the first thing that they launched years ago when they were first launching Fenty Beauty. And because I have so much makeup now, I don't don't need to buy another powder until I finish pretty much everything that I have. But I just go directly underneath my eye with the powder. I'm not bringing it all the way down or around the nose. It is just the area underneath my eye that would be more susceptible to creasing. Now, when you're younger, you don't have to worry as much. And I know some people will just genetically, like I've always genetically kind of had a little bit of a crease or under eye bag. But when you're younger, you really don't have to worry as much about your foundation and concealer and stuff creasing or getting in your laugh lines and smile lines. That's definitely something you worry about more when you're older. And even still, it's something that I've started to come to terms with. Like, makeup is going to look like makeup. We can make it look natural if we want. We can make it look simple, whatever, but it's still makeup at the end of the day. So if there are signs of my makeup being there or makeup being worn, if I have some creases in my makeup at the end of the day, it is what it is. Smile lines, laugh lines, like you lived a very fun, happy life. Like, of course, I just don't see those as negative things. Like, yeah, it can make your makeup ruined or look bad in your opinion, but I feel like that's just, for me, means that my makeup is lived in. Anyway, moving along, getting off my soapbox, I do have the Fenty Beauty, which is what my baby cousin has, the Fenty Beauty Soft Matte Pro Filter foundation. However, that's not really my shade. So I'm going to use their skin tint, which is an equally as good product. I really love their skin tint. And a skin tint is basically the same thing as a foundation, but just a lesser coverage. So foundations will have different coverage levels. You have kind of the tinted moisturizer, skin tint, BB cream area that is more so like a lightweight coverage product. It's almost pretty much the same as like a lightweight coverage foundation. And then you have medium coverage, which would be covering up more of the features of your face. Like if you have hyperpigmentation and stuff, it might not cover absolutely everything, especially if it's really deep hyperpigmentation, but it'll generally cover like any moles, stuff like that. Like this concealer that I have on, I would say is a medium coverage concealer because I can still see a little bit of the darkness of my pimple scar that I had recently, but you don't see it. Like if I went really far away, you wouldn't be able to see it. And then full coverage is going to be like your full glam. You have porcelain doll type of look, no blemishes, no nothing. Like that is, you know, a full coverage product. So this is again more so on the lightweight coverage end. This is the shade 20, which might be a little bit off from my skin tone. And then especially for tinted moisturizer, I like blending out with a brush because a sponge can pick up a lot of product. Okay, maybe a little bit red for what my skin is right now. If you ever have a foundation that is not your exact color or the undertone is a little bit off, drag it down your neck so that it melts into like the color of your neck, and that way it looks, because our bodies are naturally a whole bunch of different colors. So when you do drag it down your neck, it's a little bit less noticeable and more so just looks like, oh, she's got a whole bunch of different colors on her body. She's tanning in some places, maybe not others. And then with your neck, kind of your neck even behind your ear will help. I don't go over the places that I have the concealer on. I kind of just blend around them. And then I take any extra that I have to put on my nose. And I don't always put foundation and product on my forehead, but if I do, it's pretty much just whatever is left on my brush. I don't add any additional product because I feel like something that can make your makeup look really makeup-y is when your forehead looks super heavy or like it has a lot of product on it. So I again just use what is left over. And same thing kind of for my nose. I feel as though my makeup looks more makeup-y, which again, there's nothing wrong with that. If you're wearing makeup and you want it to look like makeup, then freaking go for it. And again, makeup is always going to look a little bit like makeup, but sometimes the makeup just gets a little heavy and cakey looking and not everyone wants to go for that. So again, something that I feel like helps with that is the middle of my face not being weighed down with a whole bunch of product. this is another area where you kind of have a decision tree on how you can do things based on the formulation of products that you'll be using. So in this instance, if I were to be doing cream bronzer, I would do my cream bronzer before I powder the rest of my face. If I do cream blush, depending on the formula, there's some cream blushes that work really well over a full face of makeup and over powder. And I find in general that cream blush works better than cream bronzer over makeup products. I don't know how, but it just works out that way for me. But depending on the formula, you might do cream blush and bronzer and even cream highlight and then powder your face on top of that. Or if the rest of the products you're going to use on your face are powder products, you can go ahead and powder. So I think that's what I'll do today. I can definitely do another video showing how I would do the order if I did other things, you know, like if I added an eyeshadow or if you know what I'm saying? So please let me know if there are any other types of beginner makeup videos you'd like to see. So I just take a little bit of my powder. Again, you don't want to take a whole bunch in my opinion, because doing too much powder is what can make your makeup look a little bit cakey. So I just like to lightly, like if this were a pressed powder, I would press into it like maybe 1, 2, 3 times and then apply that on my face. And then if I need to go into more, go into more. Less is more with makeup. It's much easier to add more makeup than to take away the makeup that you've put on your face. So starting with a lighter hand with your products is always going to work out better than if you just go really heavy handed, like taking a whole bunch of powder, stamping it on your face, and then just having like a circular brush. Like I've had that before, especially if your powder doesn't match your skin exactly. So I just powder all over my face. Even when I don't put foundation or any type of complexion product on my forehead, I will still put a little bit of powder on my forehead just because, again, I have like shininess up there and I also want it to look uniform with the rest of my face. I don't want my forehead to be super shiny, but the rest of my face to have a demi matte or like mostly matte finish to it. That's what makes your makeup, again, look like you have makeup on, or like it's, you know, I guess the better way to phrase that would be not like you have makeup on, but like something with your makeup is off. Like sometimes your makeup can look really beautiful or a makeup look comes out really well and you look at something and you're just like, there's just something that's off about it. After powdering is where I would personally go back in and do my eyeliner. So if I'm adding any more eyeliner, which you can just do upper lid liner, I feel like upper lid liner gives the definition to the lash line while also keeping your eyes really nice and open. But I often like to just do a little bit of eyeliner on the lower lash line, and I'll keep this to the outer half mostly, or outer third to outer half of my eye, again, to keep me from closing off my eyes anymore. However, if I'm doing a colored eyeliner, again, I will often bring that like all the way around my eyes. And that's something that, again, if you want to see that technique and what I do in those instances, I can definitely make videos for that too. After this, I would do bronzer, and the way that you do bronzer is going to depend on your face shape. But I generally, because I have like my cheekbones up here, I like to do a little bit under my cheekbone because that's the kind of point of bronzer slash contour. Bronzer is more so to bring warmth and dimension back to the face, but you're often going to want to bring dimension back into the face in the places where it would naturally have dimension. Like you're not going to want to put, well, you could if you wanted to, but bronzer like right underneath your eyes, like in this area, because that's not a place where you naturally have a shadow, or where if you were getting tanned by the sun, you would have a little bit of a darker tan. Like if you're going for a bronzer look, you're really going for where does my face naturally get darker when I tan? And if you're going for a more contoured look, you're going for where does my face naturally have shadows when light hits it? So if I were to go for a contoured look, I could actually even go down a little bit deeper, but I feel like sometimes going a little bit further down on my face drags my features down, and I prefer to like lift my features up. That's just something that I've always enjoyed. So again, I always do it like right underneath my cheekbone, and then again, I try not to bring it too far, like maybe a little bit past where the corner of my eye would be, so like right here, because again, if I bring my contour, even though I do have like dimples and stuff, and technically I could, if I wanted to, like deepen some of these areas that will have shadows when my face moves different ways, you know, the dimple is still going to be there if I dimple, you know, so I don't feel the need to like accentuate those features. So again, I could even have brought it down like a little bit further into here, and you'll see different shapes as you like observe and get more into makeup, and you'll figure out which types you like to do. But again, for me, I just like to put it there. So I take it on my bronzer brush. This is a really old Eco Tools brush, but I like something that is fluffy but also a little bit flat, so I can use a side to really kind of chisel in the area that I want and then blend out and up with the rest. And I prefer to try to blend up versus like coming down a lot, because again, if you come down or you're like blending downward, you might bring it too far down for what you're wanting. What is that? Piece of cat hair. And then I bring it up kind of on the temple of the forehead. Again, just in the places where if I were getting tan, where would the sun hit me and tan me more than other places? So like my hairline is a place where, you know, you might have the sun beaming down on you, making you more tan. Also blending it into the hairline helps marry it a little bit more, so it doesn't look like, oh, I have a splotch of bronzer here, or my face is tanning like right here, and then like there's a blank spot, you know, over here. And then the same thing with the jawline. You can either go for something that's going to more so chisel it. So if I wanted to chisel my jawline, I would probably bring from like the most angular part over, since I do have, you know, a little bit of skin down here, which I love. But since I'm going for more bronziness, I kind of just do a very light hand. Again, kind of bringing it down to this part. I don't know really what it's called, like this back part of your jawline. And you can even do a little bit like on the inner part of your ear. Not necessary, but sometimes I like to do that when I'm feeling a little bit insecure about how pale I am, especially in the winter time. So you kind of start back there, bringing it down, and then I just do, again, down almost like the way that we brought our foundation down onto our neck. Kind of bronze, bring it down, make it look like, oh, she's just kind of like tanning and her body is a few different shades. I also like to do a little bit on my chin, kind of in this groove. This is more of the like contoury thing, but it's not super contoury. It just like adds a little bit, you know, right in that groove to accentuate. I feel like it accentuates my lower lip, and I like that. And then I'll also do a little bit on my nose, because again, I feel like the nose is a point of your face where you actually do get like tanned a little bit more. How you do your blush is another thing that's going to depend on how you like your face shape. Again, I usually follow like on the tops of my cheeks, and I know some people are like, why are you putting blush all the way on the tops of your cheeks when you have a highlighter that you can also put on there? I just like to layer my blush and my highlighter. I like the way that it looks on the top of my cheeks. I'm going to use this blush shade today because I feel like it's a really simple kind of rosy color, and it kind of matches what I know my cousin has. So I like to take either like a big fluffy brush like this, more so with powder products. And then if I use cream blush, I like something that's a little bit smaller, more controlled, more angled, so that I can really control, again, the product placement. Cream products can initially come off a little bit more harsh than powder products until you learn how to blend them out. So taking my blush brush, I just kind of dip it in a few times. I like these white brushes for blush because it shows you, or like the white bristles at the top, because it shows you kind of how much product product you have on the brush so you don't go overboard. And then again, I like to start kind of at the end of my eye and go upward. I did notice in the pictures that my cousin sent me that she had more of the blush on the apples of her cheeks, and she has where her facial structure, she has really high cheekbones as well, but like where her cheekbones ends, kind of like the apples of her cheeks are always high, if that makes sense. Whereas like if I smile, my apples of my cheeks are like all the way here, and then when I release my face, they go down. Like hers just kind of stay where they are. So again, if you have that, apples of the cheeks can be really cute. And I do bring it like a little bit out, but I try to keep it closer to my eye than bringing it closer to like my mouth and further down. And I personally like to do a little bit of blush across the nose, kind of like in a little wave. I feel like that makes me look and feel cutesy. And also it can kind of simulate, you know, getting a little bit of sunburn on the middle of your face. And I think despite sunburn being very bad for your skin, that the blush and flush that it gives the skin is really cute. And then sometimes I even do a little bit on my chin just to add some color there too. And then you can also even do a little bit, just like the tiniest bit. You don't want to dip your brush back in. You pretty much just want to use whatever is left over on your brush already. And you can just add a little bit, because again, your face will blush all over, not just in your cheek area. So sometimes adding a little bit of color adds to adding the dimension and life back into your face. Highlighter is something that's optional, but it's something that again can bring light to the high points of your face. I usually just do a little bit of highlighter on the very tops of my cheeks where my blush is. So not all over, like I was saying earlier, like completely covering my blush, but really just kind of in this area. The area that if I start turning my head, you would start to see it, or where the light would hit. I'll sometimes also put a little bit on my inner corner just to add, you know, a little bit of glow there. And then I like to do mainly the tip of my nose, because I feel like that's the part of my nose that catches the most light. But then also I do have light that kind of hits in between my eyes, or the bridge of my nose between my eyes. I just don't do highlighter all the way down, because the only time that I would have a light hitting me, or like a highlight, I guess, all the way down my nose is if I go down to this angle and most people are not looking and talking to me at this angle. Again, straight on, it's just going to be the tip of my nose and kind of in between my eyes. And then also adding a little bit on the Cupid's bow. That's another place, especially if you have a really defined Cupid's bow, where the light can kind of hit you. This is another completely optional, more so me step, but I really like adding in faux freckles and like coloring back in my moles and stuff. So that's a step that I do once I'm done with all of my complexion products. I just try to dot them as sporadically as possible around my face. And then I take my sponge, blot them out. You can also take your finger, but as I've said in videos before, I don't love using my fingers. I try to use tools as much as possible. I don't like the feeling of makeup like coating my fingers, but also just germ-wise. No matter how many times you wash your hands, you're always still going to have some germs on there. So the idea of like blending out my foundations and stuff with just my fingers, again, more power to anyone who does it. It's not me saying that you're doing something wrong. It's just I can't do it because I constantly think about all of the little bugs and microscopic organisms, fungi, everything that's like running around on your hands and body at any second. But that's why we go to therapy. Then once my face is done, I like to do setting spray, and I like to do my setting spray before mascara so that my mascara doesn't smudge when I put setting spray on. So I douse my face pretty heavily. Depending on what type of setting spray you have, you will want to adjust how much you use. You do want to make sure you have an even spray, especially if you're using a setting spray to try to enhance the longevity of your makeup. However, if you're using more of like a dewy face mist type of spray, then you might want to not douse yourself quite as much, because I noticed, like for instance, I had the e.l.f. dewy setting spray. That'll be in an empties video coming up. And because I was so used to just dousing myself in setting spray, I sprayed that all over myself and I felt like it was a little bit too dewy for me. This kind of has like a skin-like finish. I wouldn't say that it's mattifying, nor is it glowy, but again, just all over. Like, I like to make my face look a little bit wet, but it will dry down. And I know people have their little face fans and stuff like that. I actually had one at one point, but it was really cheap and it broke after maybe a month or two. And I was like, do I really need another junk fan? I should use my fan from my skate class because we were learning boots on the ground, or we learned a boots on the ground line dance on skates, and our instructor gave us fans. So I really should bring that fan inside to use, but then I'm like, am I gonna remember it when I go to skate class? I could just buy another like small little fan, you know, the fold out ones. But it's also a thing where I don't know where you buy those anymore. They used to be in dollar stores and stuff like that, but now I feel as though the other like fans with misters and battery operated stuff have kind of taken over. So unless I were to get it on Amazon, which I really try to not use as much, you know, but unless I get it on Amazon, it's one of those things where, like, where do people buy that now? Okie dokie. And after my face dries down, and especially my eye area in particular dries down, is when I like to do mascara. You know, mascara is up to personal preference. Some people like mascaras that are more lengthening. Some people like ones that are more volumizing. I like one that's kind of in the middle. This one is from Give Beauty, which I'm pretty sure is effectively discontinued. All of their stuff is on clearance on Sephora's website, and they haven't restocked anything that has been out of stock in the longest time. But tips for applying mascara without it getting all over your lids is to look down into a mirror and also kind of wiggling your brush. And wiggling your brush also helps your mascara not get super clumpy. And if you get kind of an area where multiple lashes are clumping up with the mascara, wiggling the brush back and forth can kind of break up that area. Some people also like to blink to do their mascara. I do that a little bit, but I can't do it too much because then it'll give me vertigo and I'll start getting nauseated. I think today I'm gonna keep my mascara on the upper eyelashes, but if you do your lower lashes, essentially the same thing. You want to look down into a mirror, and they also have, you know, shadow shields and different contraptions where it keeps the product from transferring on your eyelids as you're doing your mascara and things like that. It's kind of one of those things again where it's like makeup is makeup. I feel like mascara on your eyelid or getting mascara on your eyeshadow is kind of a rite of passage that everyone should live through and like learn to work through. And we have solutions for that. So you don't need to buy a whole new product for that purpose. This is where the makeup is at now. We're gonna come back and do lips, but I need to film a TikTok video about some lip products. So I'll be back once I film that. I filmed with lip stains, so my lips are a little bit pinker than they were when I went away, but it's fine. So for lip liner, I like to use one that is like a little bit deeper than my skin tone or really close to my skin tone. This one is the Milani Understatement lip liner in the shade Rich Cocoa, and it's one that is, you know, a little bit deeper than my skin tone. And you are going to line your lips kind of following your natural outline. But if you're someone like me who has a double lip line, which is basically where you have the lip line, like you guys can see on this side, I have a natural lip line, but then there's also this like ridge of extra skin that looks like another lip line. So I, even though I'm not always comfortable with it, try to like line on top of that second lip line, not too far up so that it starts looking like the mustache that I was covering, or like the hyperpigmentation. I call it my mustache because I do actually have hairs on my lips and I don't always remove them. And similarly to with eyeliner, so that it doesn't look like a super harsh line, I like to do small little strokes versus like a big long line. And then mush your lips together a little bit to help like blend it out. You can also blend it with your finger a little bit. They also have lip smudger brushes, but again, you don't need a whole separate brush to accomplish this. And then same thing on the bottom, starting at the corner of your lip. And then same thing here, I kind of have that extra lip line going under. So I'm gonna go all the way under. And then especially where I go under my lip, I like to smudge that out to make it a little bit less harsh. And then depending on what you're going to do with your lipstick, if you're going to put a really light lipstick in the middle, then I will usually bring even a little bit more lip liner onto the meat of my lip versus just the lip line. Not on the whole lip, but just bring it down a little bit, and then on the bottom lip, bring it up a little. I especially like to get in the corners if I'm going to be wearing something lighter, because I feel like the corners is where if you wear a really light lipstick and it seeps into there, or like the lightness really seeps into the corner of the lips, that's what makes it look like the corner of your lips are like chapped. And I already have corners of my lips that are a little bit deeper, so I'm not looking to accentuate that. And then again, depending on the types of products that you have, you will apply your lipstick in different ways. And even within the same type of lipstick, you might apply it in a few different ways. So I know for me, if I have something that's like a regular bullet lipstick like this, I like to just dab it on my lips, because I am at the point in my life where I like something that's a little bit sheer and doesn't look full pigment, full coverage on the lips. And kind of even a similar thing with some of my liquid lipsticks. I've done a video semi recently where I had used this Morphe one. It's a matte liquid lipstick, and I just dabbed a few little spots on my lips and used my finger to blot it out and sheer it out a little bit. But for instance, when I wear something like a red, sometimes I'll blot a red out, but a lot of the time, especially during the holidays where I'm going for that classic holiday look, I will just go full pigment. And that's where you'll really want to make sure that your lip liner is good, it's in place. We don't want any, feathering or bleeding or anything like that. But I actually am going to use what I was just filming with. These are the Violette FR Lip Nectars. They're new, and this is the shade Batiste, I believe it is. I think I used this in my last video actually too, but it is a like berry pink shade. This is kind of more of a gloss. It has a little bit of pigment to it, but a lot of shine. And so I just like going kind of in the middle area. I don't go all the way out to the lip line, and then I'll smush my lips together a little bit. And then usually on the lower lip is where I find myself wanting to kind of go over my lip line with a little bit of the color that I'm using, and a little bit on the upper lip line. Especially with this formula, it's mostly because the liner I was using is coming off kind of matte, and then this is more shiny, so it felt like they weren't melding in with each other. And I would use a gloss in the same way, just like a traditional gloss. The only difference between a traditional gloss and something like this is that this is a lip stain, so once it wears off, it will leave a little bit of color left over. And I really like that, because then you don't have to always feel like you want to or need to touch up, which again, touch up's not something that you have to do, but a lot of us like to re-add our lip color and stuff like that. With a lip stain, you'll end up with a little bit of product left over. Though admittedly, these are like really sheer color left over. It's definitely not as much pigment as one of my favorite lip stains, which are the Fenty Beauty ones. I really like these because they are full pigment, or you can even sheer them out a little bit, but they definitely leave a very noticeable stain on the lips afterwards. Anyway, this is the completed look of a more beginner's tutorial, very similar to something I would have done back when I was in middle school or high school, as I kind of grew in my progression with makeup. And I hope it is helpful for anyone who is starting their makeup journey. It's super exciting, and I hope that you really enjoy what you're doing and enjoy the artistry of it. Just let your creativity like go, whether you start off really simple like this or graduate into using more eyeshadows and colorful stuff and wanting to go more avant-garde. There is makeup for literally everyone, and I hope that you are able to find the style that you're interested in and really grow your love for it from there. Or if you're a person who just wants to use makeup as a function, like, hey, it makes me feel better about myself, it makes me feel more put together, it makes me feel pretty, that's great too. Anyway, I hope you guys are staying safe and healthy wherever you are when you're watching this, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.